So, by way of a quick introduction, my name's James. I'm the CTO at a consultancy called Cynozure, and you'll be pleased to hear that's the extent of the selling you're going to get during this presentation. If you want to come and talk to us afterwards, we've got a stand on the far side, and I'll happily take further questions and tell you more about what we do. I'm going to be talking about how to get the technology stack right for your business. And this is something I spend a lot of time doing with my customers, and it's something that has gotten increasingly difficult over the years. If you've had the chance today, yesterday, to walk around and spend some time at all of these different stands out there, you might be finding it's pretty difficult to navigate the market and figure out what you're supposed to buy. We certainly find that we see now a lot of conversations with vendors who've been told to focus on the value that you're going to deliver and the problems that you're going to solve. And you get round everywhere and they might tell you something like, we help stop fraud in your business, or we help you make a better customer experience, or we help you sell more stuff. And you're sitting there going, yeah, but are you a database, or are you a reporting tool, or are you, what actually am I buying? What do you do? How do you fit into my business? And it's a really, really difficult thing to kind of navigate, especially if you are, as a business, perhaps new to data. It's your first kind of time really getting serious about putting in place a platform, technologies, trying to do something. Maybe you don't have tons of skills or experience in the organization, or frankly, you've got tons of experience and it's still just a vast, vast list of technologies, tooling, and choice that can be exceptionally hard to move through. So I'm going to use this talk to talk about the kind of things you need to think about. I've got 10 questions to be asking yourself and asking the vendors you're talking to that are going to help you figure out what the right technology stack is for you. To help frame that thinking, I wanted to talk through some of the conversations I had yesterday. So our stand over there is like a consultancy lounge, so people have the opportunity to come and spend sort of 20 minutes, half an hour to talk to us, and we'll work through some problems with them. So I wanted to go through some of those conversations, all anonymized and protecting my witnesses. So one of the first questions I had yesterday was, how do I operationalize my data science use cases? I was talking to someone, they've got some really clear things they want to do. There was some fraud detection stuff, there was some recommendation things. They needed to do it in real time. They had a pretty decent setup already when it came to standard reporting and data warehousing technology, and they wanted to push it to the next level, and they were looking for some specific things and asking for, where could I go, where might I find these kind of functionality and features in my product? I spoke to someone who is looking at running in a multi-cloud environment, in that case Azure and AWS, and was trying to figure out what are the problems I might face if I do that. What kind of issues am I going to run in if, at pretty serious scale, I have stuff living in two clouds? Someone came and talked to me about performance bottlenecks they had on a report, loading really slowly, wasn't sure where the issue was, and felt that their tool chain as a whole probably needed some refreshing. And it was a case of, what kind of things do I need to do? How do I figure out where my problem is? And how do I figure out what I should plug in to solve that problem when I find out where it is? I've got next to nothing. I'm right at the start. Where the hell do I get going? What should I be putting in? How do I even begin to do something? Which is a really common question that we get in lots of places that we go in and talk to. A more complex kind of challenge, like I want to do natural language processing. I've got some use cases for customers. I want to deliver some services out to them. What kind of things should I be looking at? Where do I even begin to tackle this kind of challenge? What are all the considerations I might have? Who's going to help me solve that problem? And we could keep writing this list and adding 100 more kind of challenges to this. But I think this is such a common challenge and such a common problem that's why I've decided to speak about it today, and that's why I hear so much about it. And I guess that's probably why all of you are here in the room today as well. I love this bit of the challenge. Working on architectures, helping pick technologies, I think is probably the most fun part of any data delivery and project, before it all gets really hard and starts going wrong. It's the really nice bit. So I want to think about 10 questions that we need to ask ourselves and ask our vendors in order to help make sure that we make the right technology choices. So by far and away, the most important one, and we'll spend some time talking on this first one, is what are your use cases? If you were only to think about one thing when trying to figure out which bit of technology you should be going, it's this. If you've got a data strategy, hopefully you've kind of figured this kind of thing out. If you haven't, then I definitely recommend you take some time to step back and understand, okay, what as a data team in my organization am I trying to do? How am I trying to add value to my business? What are the kind of products and services I might need to be offering? And thinking about that on a long enough horizon so that you understand where you're trying to get to, even if you're not going to be there tomorrow or even in a year's time. And this is so important for so many reasons. So if we think about our challenges here and why that question dictates so much of how these are going to be solved and so much of what technology we might choose, we can start to think about, how do I operationalize my data science use cases? So in this instance, we've got some clear use cases. We say one of them is, I want to be able to pick up fraudulent logins and attempted logins on my system. So great, we know what we're trying to do, but actually we need to start to dig deeper with a question like that and say, okay, well, are we trying to do that in real time? Are we trying to do that in batch and I just want to check back on the day? Am I trying to figure that out based on a really simple set of rules, or do I need to run it through a complex model at the time? And what systems have I got that I need to then ultimately feed that through so I can understand the kind of chain of events I've got to create? Because that starts us to think about, do I need to buy a tool like Confluent or look at Kinesis or Kafka so that I can start building a real-time pipeline to look at how many login attempts there have been in the last 5-second window, and where's that going to go when it comes out? Do I need to build and deploy a machine learning model that I can pass a set of event information to be processed and tell me out the back of it that yes or no, this is a fraudulent piece of behavior? Am I able to pre-can the answer to my problem, and I just need a really simple API call to a predefined list, and therefore I need to buy a really low latency database to solve that problem? So there's loads and loads of things to consider around just a simple use case that, if you actually pick it apart, will really help you understand where you might need to be going, what you actually want to achieve, what does the business use case look like for that. Should I be running in a multi-cloud environment? What's the catch? Well, again, it's sort of, do you understand what you're going to do with that? Do you need data moving between the two clouds that's going to cost you potentially quite a bit of money to move around? Do you need high performance, but you're having to work with services that are living across two clouds? And if so, what's the point of that high performance? Why do you need it, and why can't you do it in one cloud? What's missing, or what's driving you down that route? Performance bottlenecks and challenges that are more technical in nature should also kind of be worked back. So it's easy to solve something like a performance bottleneck by saying, I make my server bigger, I switch out to some in-memory technology, I just replace the technology. But I always caution that just trying to change technology, just trying to rip it out and switch it for something else is rarely the right answer. Sometimes it is, but it's rarely the right place to start. What we need to start thinking about here is like, okay, well, what am I actually trying to do? I'm trying to serve up some reports to some external customers to come in and look at some of their data that we hold for them. Okay, so our use case is about delivering some dashboards out to a user. Then we can start thinking about what our design might need to look like. So how are you structured at the moment? Do we need to think about row-level security so that we can actually build one dashboard and present multiple data sets within it? Do I need to think about switching out my core storage engine, and what kind of technology does that need to be? Am I just a pure sort of rows, records, relational database type problem, or have I got quite complex data sets in there that I need to present out to those users? Coming in from sort of next to nothing, where do I start, is all the more important to think about, because if you don't have an idea of where you're going to go, you're going to go the wrong way inevitably. I mean, I did that this morning, running for my train, and I ran down to the wrong platform and I could see my train coming on the other platform. You don't want to be doing that when you're spending thousands and thousands of pounds on technology and realizing 6 months later that you've bought the wrong thing because you can't just run to the other platform like I could. I want to do natural language processing. Well, that's a massively deep world of opportunities and approaches that live within natural language processing. So what do we mean by that? What am I trying to do, and where might I want to go? Am I looking at sentiment analysis? Am I looking at key entity recognition because I want to pull out names, places, people, and so on from my data? Am I trying to look at key terms? What problems am I trying to solve with that? Because that's going to really help me understand what I might want to buy and what I might want to put in place. So I can't stress enough how important it is to just take that step back out of technology and think about, what am I trying to build? What am I trying to deliver to my customers? And how is what I'm going to do going to add value to my business? Because at some point, someone's going to ask you, the thing that's costing loads of money, what value is it adding to the organization? And if you haven't thought about that, then you're definitely going to find yourself in a particularly kind of tricky situation. So moving on, this causes me so much pain. How much is it going to cost you in the long run? Getting pricing out of technology vendors can be trying to get blood out of a stone. Some of them kind of easy to understand. Some of them are hidden behind multiple layers, and you need to engage and provide lots of requirements, and it can be really, really difficult if you're just trying to put a bit of a business case together, understand what you might want to approach, because without understanding the costing, it's hard to know whether this is the right piece of technology for you or not, regardless of whether it's a good technical fit. And the long run bit of this, I think, is really important. So if I start to understand my use cases properly, and I think about in the long run, okay, I want to serve up some reporting to some users. Got a really simple use case, and those users maybe are external customers of mine. Maybe I want to put it on a website so that it's kind of open to the public. I need to understand that. And that's going to start to really help me understand which technology I want to buy or what I might need to negotiate with them. Because if I work on a, say, per user license that's going to linearly just cost more and more and more the more people I add, at some point that's going to become unaffordable. So I need a vendor that can offer me capacity licensing that's going to actually grow and scale to vast numbers of users without completely breaking my budget. So picking that stuff apart is very, very difficult. I spend a lot of time working through trying to make sure I've understood the latest pricing models and helping customers figure out how much their platform's going to cost. But it's crucial, because the last thing you want to find is in a year's time, actually your usage has increased, the tools landed really well, and it's now costing you 10 times as much as it was on day one. So definitely spend some time taking this into consideration when you're selecting your technology. It's, as I sort of already mentioned, really easy to think about technology as a technology problem, but it's as much a people and a process problem as well. So it's wonderful that you want to take out some cutting-edge piece of technology that you've just found and talk to, and the vendor's given you a really great sell about why it's brilliant and it's going to help you. But if there's no resources, if you can't hire people, if you can't get consultancy or contractors or however you're going to staff your project, if you can't find people with the skills to do that, then you're really going to struggle to get any value and make use of the thing that you've just bought. And you need to think long-term. Is this the kind of technology that the marketplace is invested in skilling itself up in to make sure that I am going to have a continual supply of people? Or have I picked a really niche thing that over time is going to get more and more expensive to find those skills just because there's so few people in the marketplace that can do it, and I end up with something that's suddenly very hard to support? So really important to think about that. There's a user side of that as well, so not just for people building things, but can I get people in the business to be skilled up to be able to make use of my reporting visualization tool or my data science tool or whatever it is that I'm putting in place? Am I actually going to find that it's something people can learn and make effective use of in their day-to-day? Because if I can't get my business teams to use it, or whoever my end customer is, then I've just wasted loads of money on something that may be brilliant, but that ultimately is going to deliver no value to me. Integration then. So how does this piece of tech integrate with the other things that you have? Rarely, if ever, will you find that you're getting a single piece of technology to solve all of your end-to-end problems. Even when you're buying a platform, that's going to be made up of lots of different things in there. There's going to be database tools, there's going to be processing tools, visualization, streaming, governance, whatever it is that makes that up. And you might be buying all of that in a single box, or you might be piecing together a sort of best-in-class type approach and putting that all together. So you need to start to think about, particularly if you're taking the latter route, how does this all join up does my governance tool sit nicely on top of my ETL tool and database so that I can build up my lineage flows automatically? How well does my visualization tool plug and play with my storage layer? Can I connect a streaming piece of technology with a nice easy route into my data lake, for example? Every vendor's most incentivized to sell their piece of technology, and they'll be listing lots of connectors and so on, but you need to be really careful, because when you start to dig into those things, they often don't work as well as you might think, or as well as they're presented. Maybe they're in beta, maybe they are limited in their functionality, and they don't plug and play and connect that nicely together. So it's something to be really, really cautious of when you're approaching a multi-piece, multi-stack set of technologies, to think end-to-end, do they connect? And thinking back to our longer-term use cases, is the stuff I need to do in a year or two's time, when, for example, I need to bring in streaming, going to plug and play with the stuff that I've got? What kind of support is on offer? So support's really interesting. Some tools you're going to get excellent support out of the box. I used to work at Marks & Spencer. I helped put in the big data platform there. We used Cloudera. Cloudera support was excellent. I got great engineers on the end of the phone. They responded really quickly. It was an excellent experience as a support customer. We also had, say, other open source tools that we put in place because we wanted to use them. They solved a use case for us, but that we were kind of on our own. If something broke or there was a problem with it, we didn't have anyone we could call, because it was just an open source library that we'd deployed onto our cluster, and we were responsible for making sure that if it broke, if people stopped developing it, we could look after it and make sure it worked. There's plenty of third parties who will provide you support on top of your platform, do monitoring for you, make sure things are kept up to date, and all the kind of things you might expect from a support contract. But that's going to add extra cost. So when you're thinking of that costing, it's not just about there's a license cost for this piece of software, and I'm going to pay 30 grand a year for this agency to support it for me because I don't have that skills in-house. So understanding what you need in way of support, which again comes back to use cases, because do I need 24/7 support that I can ring up at a moment's notice and I'll have someone immediately on it, or is actually 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, with a sort of 2-hour response time more than enough for my use case, because it's not business critical? If you don't understand what it's for, you're not going to be able to make that decision properly, and it's going to start to be a surprise when the cost comes in that you're having to pay for. Security, this is a really easy thing to just shy away from because it's such a complex and rich topic, but all of these tools are all going to offer different level of security, different levels of capability, different integrations with other security tools. So this is about really understanding what data am I holding and how sensitive is it, how protected do I need to be. I always approach this with customers about, do you understand your attitude to risk with this project? So sitting down and spending some time thinking about, as an organization, how risk averse are we? Are we maybe a bank or an insurance company where we need to be rock solid on everything? We need the 11th degree, just go all out, spend the money, make sure it's perfect? Or actually, do we hold perhaps relatively unsensitive data? Are we quite small and unlikely to be a target for cybercrime or for an ICO audit, for example? Where do we sit on that scale? How much is it worth investing for us to make sure that we've got enough security? And then, does the tool I buy meet that requirement? So I mentioned row-level security earlier. If you know that's a requirement for you, there's lots of tools that don't offer that, and that's going to rule them out immediately, or make you have to do a load of workarounds when it comes to design in order to simulate that effect. Or it's going to mean that you have to build 50 dashboards for your 50 users and maintain them all, because you can't create one and present each user their own view of data. So understanding your security requirements is another really, really crucial one to think about. Can it grow over time to accommodate new use cases? So we've sort of touched a bit on this, and this is again back to understanding your use cases. Most customers that I see kind of go on this journey will start with laying the foundations for stuff. So they need to get in place a data platform, they need to get in place something to ingest and store that data. They need to get in place some basic visualizations and automate some reports. That's a really, really common journey. Most of you are probably been through, or are planning to go through something like that to start with. But eventually, the dashboards are going to be in. Everyone's going to be like, great, yeah, that's fantastic. But what next? I've heard everybody's doing AI. What does that mean for my organization? Or I want to start doing real-time streaming. So making sure that you've picked a platform and a set of technologies that means you're going to be able to increase your use cases is really important. And that can also be just about pure scale. So I might not need new technologies, but I might need 10 times the capacity and speed than I have now, just because we've added more data sets, we've added more users querying it, and we've just increased the demand on my platform. I don't want to have to throw all of that away and buy something else because I didn't think far enough ahead when I made my initial decisions. I hesitate to use this because they've gone completely out of vogue, but I think the 3 Vs, which are now incredibly tired, are still incredibly useful when it comes to selecting technology, because while it's very easy to say, isn't it all big data now, lots of my customers are in nowhere near the realms of big data and can get away with a small or reasonably sized relational database to cover all of their needs, and it's going to cost them way less. And back to some of our other points, it's going to have mature security, it's got loads of skills on the market for them to bring in and build a team around. So we're actually saying, you know what, I've got 10 million rows of transactions and it grows by 1 million a year. Knowing that's really important versus I have clickstream data. Back to my M&S example, our clickstream table for about 2 years of clickstream was 27 terabytes on its own, the one table. So I needed something that could happily deal with that and more than double over time as we're going to add more and more events each day. Similarly, the other Vs, so do I have fast-moving data? Do I need some kind of streaming technology? And do I need the suitable landing zone and processing capability to be able to deal with that? Is really useful to understand. And am I working with loads and loads of complex data sources? Or am I just a sort of transactional, flat, record-based kind of business? And it's really easy to think you're in the former and then realize later that you've got a load of other data that is much more complex. We did something with a London Council earlier this year to take the call center audio recordings and push that through some natural language processing to get a transcription out and then understand the key terms in there, so we could start to look at, had people pressed the right buttons and got to the right place, or did we just have really bad journeys to getting to the person they actually wanted to speak to? We started all the work we did with them very much in a okay, well, we need flattened normal transactional kind of structures. That's most of our data, that's most of our systems. But we were on a platform, in that case AWS, that meant we could easily add in audio and transcribe it when we needed to. So I still think the 3 Vs are really useful as just a starting point to think about what size you need. I see so many people get caught out by this, and it's not their fault because it's really, really difficult, but does the tool have a future? And it's easy to think this might just apply to small vendors, so niche startup, maybe some open source stuff, but equally guilty are people like Microsoft just out there who experiment and they try a load of things, and some of those experiments work and some of them don't. AWS takes the same approach. They'll try things out, they'll see which ones stick, which ones customers adopt, and some things will die off. So you need to be really careful when picking that you are investing in something and spending the time to scale up and buy the licenses, and that thing is still going to be there in 6 months' time, and you're not being told that's dead, you need to basically move over to this new thing, which is effectively an entire rebuild for you. This is so difficult to guess. You can't see the future, but it is, if you've got that low-risk attitude, easy to look at really established vendors, established technology that has now a couple of years under its belt, and importantly, has some really good reference customers that you can talk to that have successfully implemented it and used it. So this is really important, and probably if you're in a larger organization, you're going to go through like an RFI process, you're going to speak to references, you're going to ask for them, and that's going to happen naturally. And when you're a smaller customer, that can be a little bit more difficult because you're perhaps not big enough for the vendor to necessarily really care about you because you're not spending enough money. So figuring out, can you find anyone, maybe at an event like this, hang around a stand, see if there's any customers that come by that you can grab and chat to. Reach out to meetups and user groups to see if you can talk to people there that have implemented it. It's really good to find some reference customers who've really properly implemented this stuff and maybe aren't the ones that the vendor recommends you speak to, because they're no doubt they'll be having nice things to say about them. So we're kind of at an end for time in a few minutes. I am happy to take any questions people have got now, or if you don't want to put your hand up and speak in front of a room, our stand is over on the far side, and me and the rest of my team are there if you'd like to ask us any questions or try and work through a little architecture problem. Then we'll happily spend some time with you there. Hopefully what you've been able to take away from this is that there are some things that you can ask, some quite straightforward things to help you actually figure out whether a tool or a set of tooling is right for you. These are questions you should be challenging your vendors as you go around the room today. If you're looking for a problem, tell them, I'm trying to achieve this thing with my business. How do you do that for me? Ask them in 3 years' time when I'm on 1,000 users, how much is this going to cost me? Ask them how they solve your security problems. Get them to make sure that they can clearly tell you how these things work so that you are comfortable and confident that that thing is the right thing for you. So thank you very much for your time. As I said, I'll happy to take questions now. Otherwise, maybe I'll see you out there later. Thank you very much.